The only people who get affected by this concept of public are those that believe in wealth, greed, and theft, and usury. They're the most evil scum of society. And in general, those that promote Judaism. Because that's what they promote. Because they consider that anybody who's not part of Judaism is a goyim, which is a piece of cattle, which needs to be tagged, because they don't know the law, and they're supposed to die like a beast. And they're there to execute the animal sacrifices, which are the humans, which have nothing to do with man or woman. So there is a bad arrangement coming because people have no understanding what's going on around them. They have no understanding of their environment they're in. And it'd be better to wake up to the reality that if someone's asking you to surrender something, then I would suggest you just surrender. Based on reality, the guy's telling you to surrender. Then surrender. Then you'd be in protective custody. At least it's better to find out what's going to go on from there. But we tend to go back out there waiting for the next tort you're going to do, probably far worse than the last one, that could get you into more danger. Because now you're a super enemy that's going to get a ticket. And it appears the enemy of the country is the banks that supply the money. So maybe it would be better to put the bank to its test and surrender the property. Then they have no debt. Because if you surrender the property to the creditor, there's no debt. So you must be using property of another to have to surrender it to somebody else. And I hope that makes the understanding of this video clear. Don't ruin an opportunity to speak with truth. If an officer pulls you over, be respectful with him. He's doing what he believes is right. He's supposedly working with the public with a badge. Even though he goes home and takes a private paycheck like everybody else at the end of the week and collects from the same banking authority that issues the money on a private level with a private social insurance number, he wears a badge to be in the public. Because there would be no tort if there was not a difference between public and private. So the privates are at war with the public, but the privates are receiving their funding to commit the chaos through the banking authority that supplies the money into the country. Mm-hmm. And none of the countries have any money, so they're bankrupt. They're under bankruptcy protection. The privates work for the bank. You use a public document to apply to get a private identification number to work for the insurance agency, whether it be in the U.S., the Social Security program, or in Canada, the Social Insurance program. So you're working as a private agent for the insurance company. Period. You may moonlight. You may work for Esso or GM or IBM or many of these other companies, but your primary employment is through that social insurance agency.
Well, they're pimping you out to those other companies, right? To work for one of those companies,
right.
You already have to be plugged into SIN.
So it's kind of like overtime.
They're your pimp. They're the master.
So that's how it works. So at the end, if you understand what's going on, it'd be much better for someone involved in a hostile war to surrender, because the laws of war says they have to look after the prisoners. The problem is, if our system continues the way it is, which is causing a major deficit worldwide because all the privates that are out there are accumulating such a debt because they're holding up the money that the public needs so desperately to be in there to operate the government, eventually the government's going to collapse. And what happens when the government collapses and has no money? All it is the plug gets pulled, the issuance of the currency is pulled, the government's bankruptcy protection ends, and something has to come in to run the world. We call that new world versus old world. It'll be a new world order, an order or priesthood. And these guys are determined to follow biblical code to execute under the old covenant the animal sacrifices. Those that don't know the law. And so all those that don't know the law are nothing more than the animals that were put up on the altar in the old covenant. It never sufficed. It continued to be sacrificed, so they needed as many as possible. So there was a lot of bloodshed of animals on that altar, as there will be in the coming future of all those that do not surrender what is not theirs. Jesus said quite clearly, in order to be his disciple, you had to forsake all to be his disciple. All is everything. Relinquishment. Complete. Not part of. He said you're separate from the world. Well, the minute you surrender what doesn't belong to you, you remove the civil from the spiritual. So you're no longer worldly, which is secular. You're now spiritual. And people have mixed up, because the church has got so contaminated from the Roman Catholic Church to the disillusioned Protestants who thought they were going to protest against the church. But why would you protest against something that's no good anyways? Because you shouldn't have been part of it to begin with. So there's no point trying to protest it. You might as well have abandoned it. It's better to walk away from something than be attached to it and protest it if it's never going to be cleared up or fixed. So they were never part of it because Christ never inaugurated the Catholic Church. That came centuries after his death. So, which came first, Christianity or the Roman Catholic Church? Well, the Roman Catholic Church is running the world, and therefore every birth document is based on Roman civil law, which is based on the timing of Constantine trying to figure a way to deal with the Christians. Because they were so, as many as they killed for Christ's movement, there was more coming in. She said it's better to join them than to try to beat them out of existence. But they contaminated it. And the real Christians never joined the Roman religion.
So that's how the Roman Catholic Church came to be, right?
It's just a contamination. It was like a treaty between good and evil. Putting false with good, but it didn't mean it was supposed to be together. That was just their idea to control it, which would be like a satanic idea to control the idea of the teachings of Christ, but it has nothing to do with it. So all their holidays, all their complete festival holy days are all based on complete pagan origin, trying to mingle in with things that the Christians never ever celebrated or ever even adhered to. So we've got a very mixed up world that doesn't know where it once was. They don't know their origin. And their original name is Christian because the fact is Christ goes back to the Father because he was there at the beginning of creation. And therefore he knew us from the very beginning and he had vested interest in us. So he's closer to us than our own fleshly, what we consider a fleshly family, and that's why you had to forsake all in order to be his disciple. You may lose your family for this belief, because if they're going to continue in the secular world, they're going to think that they're closer to the civil world than they are actually to the spiritual, which would be God, which is what breathed life into the first man and woman. There's no possible way we would have life without that source, and that's the Spirit of God that the original couple had cut off by their sin. Therefore, they no longer have the Spirit of God. And that's what the purpose of Christ was. So God gave himself to actually show man the way. And then, unfortunately, the people running the world today that are running the banking did not accept him. They were part of the Abrahamic covenant of promise as a nation. But they had to accept the Messiah for the new covenant, which was opening up an arrangement to obliterate the old covenant, which required ceremonial ritual. He died once for all time, so there was no longer a need for the priests to be the surety for the people to offer up sacrifices on the altar. So your world that you live in has the lawyers that are representing that old priesthood of the Levites, who are only allowed to go to the bar to pass the offers up onto the altar. And therefore, there is nothing new under the sun, and you need to educate yourself, and we hope we'll give you many more videos, because I could go on for probably 65 million more hours on this. And I'm giving this to you free, I'm not for hire. Because that's where the problem is, because love does not sell itself. If it sells itself, it sells its talents, then it's a whore. It's a prostitute. And the Judaism who denied Christ preached the fact that Jesus was born of a prostitute. These are evil people running your life right now, and you better know what game they're playing, because if you don't know it, you will end up dying like a beast, because they're going to put the number of the beast on you. And they're going to put a chip on you, and then you will be a soul collected under Satan. Those that understand this will overcome. Rebut the presumption that you would only sell yourself for money. You would never give yourself for love to your fellow man. This is pure charity. We're not doing that right now, and there's not a religion out there doing that I'm aware of, other than if you find pure Christianity out there.